Where is it? What does it do?
Well, the prostate gland is hidden underneath the bladder. Most people call it the prostrate gland. It's not the prostate gland. And it really adds sort of nutrition to seminal fluid to keep the little sperm alive. And basically, as you get older, the prostate gland tends to increase in size. Now, it can increase in size because of non-malignant, called benign enlargement, or cancer. If I can use this opportunity now just to describe the symptoms, it would fit in perfectly.
Do we like?
The symptoms, what you'd have if you had an enlarging prostate. This may be benign enlargement, or it might be cancerous. Yeah. So the symptoms, if we can get them up on a graphic now, are frequency. Right? Also, well, look at risk factors. Okay, who gets it then? We'll look at the risk factors. Who gets it? Well, it's not a young man's disease. Most cases are well over 50, 75% are over 65. Family history, is it in the family? And, of course, David has a link there, well, to a prostate problem.
Sure.
It's more common in Afro-Caribbean men and less common in Asians. And obesity, lack of exercise and diet also have an influence.
And what about those symptoms? Do we have those?
Yeah, here we are. Frequently passing urine, especially at night. Then when you're standing there to pee, it can be slower at the start than you have been, a poorer stream when you pass, and you might dribble at the end. Then when you have to go, it's urgently, you've got to get there quickly. And then finally, a feeling of not emptying the bladder afterwards. So it could be a few of those symptoms, one or two, or all of them.
So you look at all those symptoms there, but actually, David, for you, you didn't have any of those.
None of them. Absolutely none of this. I was leading a normal life. And what happened in my instance, I'm extremely lucky, I do stress that, is that I'd rung my stepmother, and I knew my father going for what she calls his MOT. Once a year, goes in for a final check with the doctor. And you have to remember, my father's the age of Her Majesty the Queen, so he's 85, 86. And you'd expect gentlemen of that age to have various problems. He had his usual checkup, and I rang to say, well, how's Dad? Well, they're suspecting prostate problems. Now, that rang an alarm bell in my head. I remember reading, about 3 or 4 years ago, Andrew Lloyd Webber, who I know, he did a whole piece in the national newspaper saying about his prostate problems. And I read it thinking, I should get checked. But of course, we men don't bother. We're the worst. Women are very generally, I think, very good. Men don't. And as soon as my stepmother said, I made an appointment straight away, saw my local doctor.
And actually, the first test that you do is pretty simple.
Oh, very simple. It's a blood test.
It's a blood test.
That's all.
So what are they looking for in the blood test?
You tell me. Well, you tell me. Go on.
It's called the PSA, prostate-specific antigen. It's a marker that something's happening in the prostate gland, and if it rises above a certain level, it's indicative this could be prostate cancer. And yours was raised, wasn't it?
It was raised, and then he said, no alarm bells, leave it a while. I went back the second time, and it had changed. It had gone up. So I thought, hang on, something's going on here. So he said, you know what, I think you should go and see a urologist, a consultant urologist, which I immediately did. He fixed an appointment for me. And, of course, what happens there, they do more blood tests, and they do the rubber glove bit, you know, which the men are really freaked out about, but it has to be done. Listen, you're talking about your life.
Oh, it takes a couple of seconds.
Exactly. Exactly. So we did that, and he was very calm about it. He said, no, no, no. And then, of course, the readings had changed all the time I was having my bloods done. It was changing all the time. It was going up, it was going down, it was all over the place. So he said, of course, the final bit of all those jigsaw is a biopsy. To explain what that is, they knock you out, and they go internally and find out. So I said, well, what does that involve? He said, we take bits of the prostate and we put them under the microscope to see. So he said, well, in this case, he was very confident that he thought my cancer in the... Well, we didn't know it was cancer at the time, but that it was going to be contained.
Within the prostate?
Within the prostate. I said, fine, great. And I said, well, this is what you do. He said, well, you take samples from the front of the prostate. So I said, well, what about the back of the prostate? Well, we don't normally do that. Well, if I'm going down, I'd rather do the front and the back. And actually, when the readings came back, there was cancer on both sides. So I knew it was throughout.
How were you told, and how did you feel when you were told? How serious it was?
Well, I had the biopsy, then I had to go back, obviously, to my consultant to get the results. And as I walked in, there was a lady sitting there, and I never forget, it was like a scene out of a movie. I said, who's the lady? Because when I'd seen it was just one-to-one. He said, oh, this is a Macmillan nurse. I went, oh, no, this is it. I knew. You didn't have to tell. I said, OK, I've got it. And Philip, the only thing I can tell you, you go completely dazed. It's like the world stops, and you're in shock, because I'd never dreamt I suppose most people don't dream you're going to have cancer. Keep calm. And they said, look, you know, you're terribly social. It's just before Christmas. Why don't you go off and enjoy all your lovely Christmas parties? Why don't I book you in mid-January and then we'll do the operation?
Yeah.
I said, fine. I went home in the days. I drove back. Don't know how I drove back because I wasn't sort of concentrating. And like, my daughter had come down from London and she said, Dad, you look dreadful. What's wrong? I said, I think I've got cancer. She said, what do you mean you think? She immediately rang the consultant and said, I'm coming in with Dad tomorrow. We fixed another appointment. He very sweetly explained the whole thing that he'd already told me. He told my daughter. And they give you various leaflets, which I'd read overnight. And I'm thinking, I've got this thing, cancer in me. I want it out.
And so what was the next step then? So you went back in the January to have the operation?
Well, what it was, I said, look, no, it was quicker than that. That was an amazing thing about it. It was NHS, it was very quick. I said, look, I've got cancer in me. I said, please, the earliest, if you have somebody dropping out of the queue for operations, a cancellation, I'll take it.
Yes,
so
whenever
he
it
rang
is.
me just before Christmas, we've got a cancellation, book me, I'm in.